Hey guys, so in years past I've had serious problems with yellow jackets, and this simple to put together trap you can use in your yard. You can even help your neighbors out by putting these out because it draws in yellow jackets from a very broad area. You could be talking about anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 600 yards, and they'll come right to these traps, be trapped, and you'll decimate the population of these hives because they're always out foraging and hunting. So except for the queen, they're going to be going out, and of course some of the queen's workers, they're going to be in the nest. But the ones that are going out for food that keep the yellow jacket nest or the ground wasp nest going is going to be the ones that are going out in the field and looking for food. So by trapping them, we can just collapse the population of the yellow jacket nest. So let me show you how to put this together. Now I do have 5 different recipes. I'm going to show you the most common one I use in my own yard, and I'll give you lots of tips along the way. Also, I put together a PDF booklet that you can use to help you along the way of doing this. There's a lot of tips and tricks in there. If you're a member of the Patreon, a paid member, you can download this for absolutely free. You can save it to your phone, print out a hard copy like this, and you'll have it forever. But it's going to give you a lot of additional information on keeping yellow jackets away from your home and your family. So guys, the first thing we need is any just simple 2-liter bottle. You could use a smaller or larger bottle, but if you're going to be making quite a few of these traps to set up a perimeter around your property, it's best to use these 2 liters because there's something you're going to be throwing away. So you can keep them as you finish with them and just collect them in your storage area, and then when you go to make these traps, you'll have them ready to go. So first thing we need to do is we need to cut right around the top. And this label that's already there is great because I can just use that as a guide for cutting the top off of our bottle completely in a completely straight line. Now next is, and of course in my PDF I talked about using staples, but I've thought about it quite a bit, and I think rather than staples, so I can easily remove this cap, refill, or put in new bait, I thought of a better way to do this. So disregard what I'm saying about staples in the PDF and just use paper clips, because this is something you can put on and take off super easy. They're not affected by the rain. They won't blow off or get lost too awful easy. So basically you're just going to take 4 paper clips and put around the top of your bottle, and that keeps your funnel in place. Remember, we've got to remove that cap, but I'm just showing you the simple way to create this, and I'll talk about why this is so effective in just a couple of minutes. Now next, once you've cut the top in a straight line, you don't really need the label anymore. So regardless of the brand you're using, it's got an easy to remove label like this. The reason I would recommend doing this is because you're going to need to monitor the trap, and this label being on there is going to kind of block your view there. So just take a pair of scissors, cut it off. You might see a little bit of glue residue, not a big deal, but we just want to be able to monitor the trap and see what's happening inside. And if we get a lot of mold growth, or maybe we had a heavy rain come through and we filled up too high above our funnel, we can just easily remove our paper clips, remove the funnel, and then go back in. And of course, like I said earlier, be sure to remove the cap because that would render our trap completely ineffective. So that's the basic setup right there of just a common 2-liter bottle. Now, I would recommend for just an average size property making as many as 10 of these. The next thing I want to do is I just want to take a standard hole punch and punch a hole on opposite sides. This is a little bit tricky because I'm actually trying to go through 2 layers, so I may have to just kind of lift our funnel out there and then do that on the opposite sides. One on that side, spin it around, and one on this side. Now you could do this with a knife or pair of scissors, but I just found that's an easy way to do it if you happen to have a hole punch around. Now what we want to do is we want to take any type of garden string or twine and tie a string across the top. Now this is a very important thing to do because we want to put these traps a little bit off the ground. We don't want children coming in contact with them. We don't want pets or anything like that knocking them over or getting into them easier. Nothing really highly toxic in here, and it wouldn't hurt children or pets, but we just would be better off not having them get into it. So we're just going to tie that string on both sides to make it super easy to hang from a limb. I get that in there, a little bit tricky there. All right, and so that way we have our basic trap set up, put our funnel top back in there, and remember to make sure that we add our paper clips just to stabilize the top a little bit. And then we'll start talking about the actual baits that we use. Now I have 5 different recipes, but I'm going to give you the most common one I use around my yard. But just depending what you have around your house or garden, you'll find that any one of those baits will work quite well. So that's our basic trap setup right there, and you can just hang it limbs, trees, under the eaves of houses. But one thing to remember is you want to set this up away from barbecue areas and away from playgrounds, things like that. You just kind of want it away from the home where you're going to be spending the most amount of time. Now, I want to give you a tip on a product I purchased years and years ago. If you sit out by the pool and drink a soda or anything sweet like that, that can attract yellow jackets and other wasps right to your can. And I bought this product really super cheap on Amazon. I don't know if they sell it anymore because I've had it for probably 10 years, but this is just a simple cover for your Coke cans. Now, if you don't want to purchase these, you can just take your iPhone, cell phone, whatever type you have, and just set it on the top of the can on the smooth glass side. That way, when you're away from it, if you're out swimming or whatever, you won't have a wasp, yellow jacket, hornet, or anything get down into the can, become trapped, and then when you go to take a sip, you end up with one in your throat, and they can sting in there. They can cause anaphylactic shock, and a lot of people end up in the emergency room, and in some cases, much, much worse. Now, I would recommend mixing this in a large container like this, because if you have multiple traps, you can mix, you double, triple, quadruple, 10x, whatever, how many ever traps you have up around. And then when you go to refill these, just remove the paper clips and you can pour it out, rinse it out, and then refill each one there. So that makes it super simple just to walk around the yard. The refilling procedure may be once every week or 2 weeks, so it is a little bit of a maintenance thing going on there, but just want to keep bringing yellow jackets into our traps to drop the populations and crash any open nests that are out there that you don't know about. Riding a mower on top of a yellow jacket nest, they will come out in droves and attack you. A push mower is even worse because you can't get away quite as fast. Walking across ground vibrations can bring them out of their nest. Even pets, just running too close to it. If it's a larger size dog, you may have a pet that just gets attacked repeatedly very quickly. So the first thing we're going to do is open our Coke and have 1 cup of just regular soda. Now make sure you don't use diet soda because we want the sugar component of this, and you might want to wait maybe 20 or 30 minutes and just let it go flat. So open it before you use it and then let it kind of fizz out a little bit. So we're going to use the 1 cup there. We'll go on to our water. And we're going to do the same thing. This is just standard water. I wouldn't use tap water because of the chlorine. That might drive some of them away. The smell of the chlorine or fluorides in there might make a difference. So just 1 cup of any type of pure water. Now, yellow jackets, along with other types of wasp, are highly attracted to fruit juices and especially any type of rotting fruit. So I would say about 1/2 cup of any type of real fruit juice, not the artificial stuff. And so we're doing 1/2 cup there. And one thing that you might want to do is if you have any dry yeast, putting 1/4 teaspoon, just a dash of yeast into our mixture, and that will start the fermentation process. Also, if you don't have yeast, you could substitute it with apple cider vinegar. Make sure you shake it well because a lot of them have that settling effect. Adding some of that to our mixture. Now, you don't want to do yeast and the apple cider vinegar. The apple cider vinegar can kill the yeast and stop the fermentation process. So either or, but not both. So, and that gives off quite a smell of fermentation that will draw them into our trap. Again, we're only making this for 1 trap. So if you have multiple traps, just 5x, 10x the recipe, and you can go around the yard and do what we talked about earlier about refreshing each one every 1 to 2 weeks. Now next we're going to put in 1 tablespoon of any type of granulated sugar, and that's going to help the fermentation process because we're going to really be out in the hot weather, and that's going to really boost it there. Another thing you can add, and I grow cantaloupes in my garden. This one was a little bit smaller than some of the cantaloupes I grow, but overripe fruit is a great thing to add. So if you have any type of fruit trees in your yard, if you have any type of fruit like this, cantaloupes that you're growing, just take 1 piece and then put it into our trap. Now, when you go to pour it in there, you may have to remove the funnel because it may get stuck in the funnel, and then you can put the funnel back on. But overripe fruit is going to help boost it. If you've ever noticed, if you're having a picnic and you have any type of fruit on your picnic table, yellow jackets invariably always come in and start feeding off of that, especially cantaloupe and other types of fruits because they're just drawn to it like a magnet. Now, our trap itself can be great for trapping the yellow jackets inside the nest. They get in and they can't find their way out easily, but there's one added thing we can do, just 1/2 teaspoon of dish soap. And I can say you can use these types of dish soaps, but I would use a Castile soap where you have less of a chance of interrupting that fermentation process among your sugars and your whatever type of rotten fruit you might have in there. So I would recommend Castile soap. You can buy it online. I'll put a link in the description. So that's what we're doing. We're going to put a little bit in each trap, draw them in there, take a look at it every couple of days, and then about once a week or possibly 2 weeks if you're not catching anything, then you can empty it. But I have seen these traps with literally 50 to 100 yellow jackets in there. Because I've dropped the population so much in my yard and in the surrounding yards, I rarely see a yellow jacket. I see sometimes other types of insects flying around like hornets and things like that, but I can easily knock one of those nests down with a long reach spray. All right, so I'm gonna add just a 1/4 teaspoon of our Castile soap, and that's going to boost it because whenever they get in there, that surface tension has been broken. Sometimes you'll see insects, they can actually walk on top of liquids almost in a miraculous type fashion. So we're gonna stir it up. We're gonna remove our paper clips, and this is the same thing you'll do out in the field as you're changing these out. You'll remove your cap. I've got the one piece of fruit in there, and like I said, I might even add a little bit of our yeast to help that process. Now, when we put this in there, we want to make sure that the cap, the lid, is at least 1 inch away from the liquid, so that way when they go in, they fall right into it there. You can see the Castile soap on the surface, which makes it much harder for them to come in and walk on the liquid and then possibly find their way back out the top of our trap there. So again, that's what we're doing. We're just making a simple trap like that. I'm gonna go around the yard and I'll show you a yellow jacket nest that started to form, but because these traps were set up around the perimeter, the population collapsed, the foraging workers went out, they end up getting trapped, and then the queen dies and the queen's workers die because they have no food. So basically you can see the beginning of a yellow jacket nest or ground wasp nest starting, and then suddenly they're just no longer there because our traps have effectively stopped the food being brought into the nest. So let's go around the yard and I'll show you a few things as we go and tips on how to keep yellow jackets out of your yard in addition to making these traps. Now, I almost forgot, there's one other thing, that if you have a massive yellow jacket problem that's already happening around your area, you can upsize your trap to a 5-gallon bucket. And this is basically the same principle, same recipe. Of course, you're gonna make it larger because you're gonna have so much product there, but you can take any type of 5-gallon bucket, make sure it has the lid, drill a hole in it, and just put any type of funnel in the top. Same principle there. We want the funnel to be maybe 1/3 way down in there so it doesn't fall off or blow away in a heavy, strong rain or wind. But something like this, if you have a massive yellow jacket problem, instead of the smaller traps, you can create 2 or 3 of these size traps. I know that sometimes bakeries and places like that, they'll actually throw 5-gallon buckets away. So if you don't even want to buy a bucket, just go by your local bakery. They may be using these for icing. Just rinse it out thoroughly. I wouldn't recommend using the ones that have paint in them because paint can be something that might drive the yellow jackets away. So you want it to be clean enough where it's not something that will have an odor to it. So any type of chemical that's been in these buckets probably wouldn't work. So you can either use an unused bucket like this or go to your local bakery and get some of those that they're using for icing or whatever else they're bringing into the bakery. So guys, I built this trash can station right here to put my trash cans in where it's out of the weather and out of the intense sunlight, so the trash cans will last as long as possible. But there's a couple of things I've done here. I've taken my trash cans and I've drilled 1/4-inch holes in all of the trash cans, so all the liquids that might spill in there drains out. Also, I make it a habit of washing my trash cans roughly about once every 1 to 2 months because there can be a buildup of residues even with quality trash bags that might get punctured. But it also is important to try to use a trash can that doesn't get punctured easy. So remember, lidded trash cans and drainage holes on the bottom. Very few trash cans do have that where they're already able to drain. So you might have a buildup of liquid and you'll have a huge feeding station to feed yellow jackets. And also, if that lid's not there, it will be a non-stop foraging event for them to get to your trash can and eat all of those proteins and sugary baits. Now, if you're like me, you'll enjoy cooking out on the grill, but this can be the perfect feeding station for yellow jackets. Most modern grills come with a grease trap underneath. You need to make sure you clean that out. Also, another way, even if there's just a small amount of grease and they can find their way to the inside of the grill, once it cools down, it can become the perfect feeding station. So remember, buying one of these type of waterproof tarps can definitely help, and make sure it goes all the way down to your deck or wherever concrete. Make sure there's not an easy access point into the grill where there's a lot of protein-based bait inside there. Now, for many years we've fed our pets outside, but what we've learned is that yellow jackets love pet food, especially wet food. So you want to make sure that you're not leaving pet food outside. It can be the perfect, even dry food, can attract yellow jackets. So you just want to make sure that you feed your pets inside when possible. If not, make sure that once the pet has quit eating, make sure you dispose of any residue or anything left and just rinse out the bowl. The only thing we leave outside for our outdoor pets now is water, and we feed them in our garage. So I noticed this entrance several weeks back, and I noticed there was a yellow jacket standing at the entrance there. So I just left it alone and I let the traps do their trick. But what happened is there's a bait station relatively close to this entry hole, and they basically all went into our trap. At least the foraging yellow jackets went in there, the ones that were supposed to bring food back to the nest, and now the nest has been totally destroyed through a lack of workers. So basically, you're in a grass area. This can be very dangerous when you're walking by with a lawnmower. They can come out and attack you. So basically, I collapsed the population of this nest, and now it's completely dead as a result of our traps being nearby. So guys, if you're growing a garden, you want to make sure that your garden doesn't become a massive feeding station for yellow jackets. I've got a lot of fruit still growing in the garden, and when these fall on the ground, they start to rotten and ferment, and that can draw in yellow jackets very quickly. So just make sure that you pick up any rotten tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, anything that might be lying on the ground that might have a fermentation process from the natural sugars in there, and you throw it in the trash or put it in a burn pile and then burn it before it has a chance to really draw in a huge population of yellow jacket. So guys, this is a trash can composter I made, and I'll put a video link up in the top right here so you can click on it if you want to learn how to make one of these. But this composter is a great place for me to get rid of some overripe fruits and anything like that. I keep the lid on it. I also invert the lid so it can be a little bit of rain being consistently added to our compost to make sure it doesn't dry out too much, and it turns into some really rich quality soil. So making your own composter is important, but if it's an open compost area, that can draw in yellow jackets. So you might decide you want to cover it with a little bit of netting to keep yellow jackets from going in and feeding off of any rotten fruit that might be in your compost pile. So guys, I can enjoy my Zen garden quite a bit more when I know I don't have to worry so much about yellow jackets. I can easily find hornets and wasps because you can see their nests a lot easier, but a yellow jacket nest can be the size of a basketball or even larger, and it's completely underground, and the only thing that identifies that it's there is that small opening that you see that's about the size of maybe a penny or a dime. So walking past it, driving past it on your lawnmower, or a pet or a child getting too close to it, completely attacked very quickly. So it's very dangerous when it comes to yellow jackets. So if you have any questions about this video, I hope you'll become a public subscriber first. I tend to put those questions to the front of the line. Take a look at this PDF. It'll give you a lot more information, a lot more bait station ideas, and also tips for keeping yellow jackets out of your yard. Guys, I really appreciate you watching, and have a great day.